Welcome to the We Are Wake Tech podcast with your host, Wake Tech President, Dr. Scott Ralls.
Hi, I'm Scott Ralls, host of the We Are Wake Tech podcast, and this is a special edition of We Are Wake Tech, where we're announcing a great new training partnership between Wake Tech and Red Hat. Joining us today is Randy Russell, the Director of Certification Programs with Red Hat. So listen in to learn more about this exciting partnership and what it'll mean for opportunity in our region. Hello, and welcome to this special episode of the We Are Wake Tech podcast. I'm Scott Ralls, and we're very pleased to have joining us today Randy Russell, who is the Director of Certification for Red Hat. Now, Red Hat is known very well in the Wake County region. Red Hat is known very well in the technology world. In fact, Red Hat is one of the hottest companies in all of tech world now. But this is a unique company and has a unique history. And so I want to first ask Randy to tell us the history of Red Hat. But I'm going to tease that we have a special partnership announcement between Wake Tech and Red Hat that we're both very excited about. And that's what we're teeing up here today. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about Red Hat and how unique a company this is in the world of technology. So welcome, Randy.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here and really excited about the announcement. But taking a step back and talking about Red Hat, the company, here in the Wake County area, if I go somewhere wearing the Red Hat logo, sometimes people ask me if I can get tickets. And they're talking about Red Hat Amphitheater, which is a great venue. And, Red Hat has the naming rights, but in fact, there is a Red Hat independently of the amphitheater, if anybody has been there for some of the musical performances that are there. So Red Hat is a software company. It is an open source software company, and it's in fact the leading provider of open source solutions in the world. It is now actually a fully owned subsidiary of IBM, but the company was first formed in the early 90s as a 1 and then 2 person operation. I can remember when it was a 5-person operation, although I didn't work there at the time. And it went public in 1999, and it has since been very, very successful with its flagship product, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but also very, very successful in some other more emerging technologies. So for example, within the cloud and Kubernetes space, Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform is very, very well known, very well regarded. And so we are, we're not necessarily a company that you might interact with as a consumer, but I can guarantee that so many of the digital properties and digital companies that you do interact with, those are our customers. And so you have interacted with Red Hat technology, whether you realize it or not.
We have a great deal of pride, all of us, even though we don't work in Red Hat, for many of us who live in Wake County. Red Hat is part of us having grown up here. And now to watch where Red Hat is in the tech landscape. I remember when it was on, I think, Meridian Drive, and then it grew to Centennial Campus, and now you see the Red Hat on the Raleigh skyline and now part of the IBM family. And so it is certainly a major part of the technology world. The history of open source software, I think, is really, a history that I'm sure you're proud of. I know Red Hat has been very much almost evangelical about open source, and now open source is, plays such a unique role within the tech world. Can you talk a little bit about what that specifically means and why Red Hat has played a unique role in the movement of open source?
Right. Well, if we go back in the history of computers and software, there was a time in which there wasn't a concept of open source software because all the software was assumed to be open. And by open, what we mean is that you have access to the underlying code that a computer might actually run. And this is going back, decades, right? But that eventually began to change, and software became more of a proprietary product. And what began to happen is this, this operating system called Unix that existed and still exists, had begun to fragment into all of these proprietary variants that could only run on one kind of hardware. And this was something that was very frustrating to people who had to work with different forms of Unix. And the command structure and everything was a little bit different between them, and they weren't binary compatible. And from this emerged this idea that well, why did we ever stop sharing the code? Why did we ever stop making it available to others? The Free Software Foundation really led this charge, and we started seeing tooling that would allow you to have some of the basic sort of tools that you would use in a Unix type environment that you could use in different ones. You could actually compile it for these different hardware platforms and it would work anywhere. And the whole reason it worked was because you could get to the code and you could port it to some other kind of hardware. And so being available, being able to share the code actually it made it possible to really advance the code. And it's not unlike a concept in mathematics. So imagine how much traction the Pythagorean theorem would get, how you calculate the hypotenuse of a triangle, right? If Pythagoras had kept that a secret and you had to pay him to do every calculation of how the hypotenuse of a right triangle, no, that wouldn't work because Pythagoras doesn't scale as an individual, but his idea could scale beyond it if he just shared what the formula was. And so a similar kind of principle can apply with software, because software is code. Software is a series of logical statements and so on. And if you're able to see those logical statements, you can extend them. You can make them work in a different setting. You can make them work in a different way. Or guess what? You can also fix them. I mean, the fact is that people who are fallible write code. And guess what? The code is not infallible. There's usually going to be something that goes wrong. And the more complex the code goes, the more opportunity there is for things to go wrong. And we see this every day in our very digital lives today, is there's just things that don't work quite right. Well, if the code is open, you now have many, many eyes that can look at it, see it, and fix it. And this is what has actually given a lot of energy to the open source movement, is the fact that it's not narrowly defined as the set of developers working for one company who can actually improve and extend and fix the code. It's literally anyone who has the time and effort and willingness and interest to go in there and take a look. And so it's really made open source explode over the last couple of decades.
You do a great job of describing something that's very complicated. If you ever need a teaching gig someday, you come look for us, because you're an amazing teacher, if you will. While we got you on that mode, before we get into the announcement a little bit about the partnership, can you take us down the road a little bit more about, you mentioned cloud computing. I'm very pleased to say too that we also have another great announcement this month at Wake Tech, where we recently received a significant National Science Foundation grant to focus on cloud computing. And we think the connection with our great partners like Red Hat are going to be just instrumental in that regard. So I know what cloud computing is, but I bet you can do a better job of describing it. You also mentioned a word that I see all the time. I think you said Kubernetes. Is that right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll be in technology meetings and people will say Kubernetes, and I just nod my head like I know what they're talking about, and I have no idea what that means. So maybe
a little. Well, so let me try to break it down into a few basic things. And so cloud, first of all, can encompass an awful lot of things, and I realized just how broad it was and how widely used when I went into sort of a big box electronics store, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I was looking at little mini laptops, and the salesperson said, and it includes, 2 gig of cloud storage. And it's like, if you're going to walk in there and somebody's going to talk about cloud storage, it means it's become a very commonplace thing. And yet I don't think it is understood very broadly exactly what that means. And so when we think of a computer, most of us have a tablet, we have a laptop, maybe we have something like a tower or a desktop, whatever it is. We usually have software installed on that piece of hardware, and the software runs directly on that hardware. Now, it is possible to actually run an operating system inside of another operating system. So let's say we have our laptop, we're running an operating system of choice, which for me is Linux, might not be for everybody, but I'm running a Linux environment. I could actually run another operating system inside of that Linux environment as what's called a virtual machine. So now it's almost like I'm running 2 computers. Well, the concept of the cloud is to really say, okay, so what if we took that concept of running an operating system in an operating system But instead of it being attached to this one particular computer, let's say we have a data center with tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of computers that are all running these virtual machines, okay? And that basically we could sell that as a service that companies and organizations could actually buy time on that cloud to run that computer without having to think anything at all about what the hardware is that's running, or having to manage the hardware, having to buy the hardware, having to think anything about, its compatibility with this keyboard or that. Literally, you abstract the hardware out of the picture, and now it's just there's some operating system running out there somewhere that I can get access to, and I'm going to get billed on a metered basis that's not unlike the way you get metered for your electricity at home, right? It's your usage. Okay, so now let me take that concept and make it a little more abstract. So we have an operating system, and I would say for the people who are listening who are still trying to learn some of these things, think about what you see on your desktop when you are running a computer, and imagine that you can see another desktop on top of it. Now, strictly speaking, you don't have to have that desktop there, but it helps to visualize what I'm talking about. Well, having the desktop for a lot of things like web, web traffic, e-commerce, all these kinds of things, mapping, a million different things. You don't necessarily have to have that desktop. Well, what if you could eliminate that and make it run more efficiently? And maybe there's other things in the operating system that are also superfluous to what you actually need for the function at hand. What you would be able to do is really pare down that. Remember, I talked about a virtual machine. You would pare that down to where it's the absolute fundamental things that you have to have and nothing else. And that's one way to describe a container, okay? A container is like a virtual machine, only it's even more specialized, and it will run on a system that knows how to run containers. Well, okay, so now we've got containers, and this is a way to run some specialized application or a piece of an application. Well, okay, so now we need to be able to do things like scale. Okay, so let's say we're coming up on the Christmas holidays and we want to be able to scale up, or maybe we are making changes to the application. We need to have some of these containers running while we work on others and put new updates in the application or whatever. What we start to need to be able to do is what's called orchestration. We need to be able to manage all of these containers that might be running different things for us as a business. Well, that's where Kubernetes comes in. Kubernetes is a technology, an open source technology developed by Google, if you've ever heard of them, and its purpose is fundamentally to orchestrate containers, okay? And so that's what you get with Kubernetes, is it's really about container orchestration, containers being a much more concise version of a virtual machine being, an abstract software version of something that you see running on hardware, right? So you're with me so far?
Following you. I've got you've made it easy, something very different.
Okay, good. So that's what Kubernetes is about. It's very much in the buzz. So just a little bit to add to that, because I work for Red Hat, is we sell a product called OpenShift Container Platform that is essentially leveraging, open source Linux, open source container technology, open source Kubernetes, plus we take some other technologies that are out there in the open source world, and we combine them all together to make it a cohesive product that works well for enterprise organizations. We're talking about big companies, Fortune 500 companies, or even smaller companies. Sometimes the most innovation comes from startups, right? But companies that, are really, very digital forward in their approach to business. And it gives them a way to do this in a much more manageable way than if they were to go out and pull in all of these different open source pieces for themselves. That's really sort of a key to the Red Hat recipe, is that we make these open source technologies that are available for anyone, downloadable anywhere. We make them much more consumable for a business or other kind of enterprise.
Well, and you've made this more understandable, so I appreciate that. And you've taken us deep into the world now with open source and cloud and containers and Kubernetes. Now I'm going to pull us back and ask you to Talk a little bit about certification, because this is really about this announcement of this partnership between Wake Tech and Red Hat that we're very excited about. But you have a unique perspective as the director of certification for Red Hat, and and the community colleges at Wake Tech. We have a great appreciation for certifications. We try to stack them, build them into all our degree programs, offer them as our non-degree wherever we can, because certifications give that standard of credibility for
Right.
people. And so talk to a little bit about why certification is so important within the IT world, and a little bit about the Red Hat certifications, if you will.
Right. Well, so certification is a process whereby somebody is certified by some other party as having certain skills or knowledge. Okay. And so forgetting about Red Hat and my role there and what we do, somebody who is a plumber, an electrician, a certified public accountant, right? Somebody actually in a medical profession. All these different sorts of professions and trades oftentimes are expected to certify. In other words, to have their skills and knowledge verified by some neutral party that doesn't have a vested interest in saying that, yes, this person knows what they're doing. Now, if you're, let's say you're an electrician, and somebody asks your brother-in-law, hey, does he know how to fix electrical stuff in my house? Well, your brother-in-law might say, yeah, sure he does. But that's not a credible claim. You need to have somebody who can make a credible claim about skills and knowledge. So this is where certification in general comes from, right? So we have a certification program at Red Hat. What are we trying to certify? Well, we're trying to certify that people have the skills and knowledge to use our products and technologies in, work settings, okay, for production purposes, not to dabble with, not to try around with. No, that this is somebody that if you were to hire them, they could come in and they would have that core set of skills that you expect them to have if they are working with a particular technology. And so this is actually very advantageous for two sides of an equation here. It's advantageous to the employer because when you're hiring somebody, it's they're behind a veil of knowledge, right? You don't know what they know. You can ask them, you can talk to them, but ultimately you're not sure. Well, the certification by a credible third party, in this case, Red Hat, is going to help you know that they have skills and knowledge. And here's another thing that benefits the employer is that when you're hiring for technical positions, if you don't have something like certification in the position, you have to have a technical interview in which you get somebody who is a technically proficient to sort of quiz your would-be applicants on their technical knowledge. Well, that's a bit of a catch as catch can approach to that in the first place. It's inconsistent. And you know what? It's also expensive because that technical professional is probably well paid and you are using his or her time for something that is not actually the thing that they usually do. And so certification is very beneficial to employers. Well, here's the flip side of the equation. Because it's beneficial to employers, it's also beneficial to individuals who would like to be employed or who would like to move to a new position with new responsibilities or who want to distance themselves from the pack of their fellow coworkers who they may love and respect, but they would like to be the one who gets the promotion from, system administrator to senior system administrator, right? So certification also is something that really, really helps the individual in a lot of ways, as well as the organization, sort of a virtuous circle, if you will.
Well, let's segue off of that real quick, because you've really set this up perfectly. So through a new partnership that we're announcing this month, we're so excited because Red Hat and Wake Tech, two close collaborators, different worlds in the Wake County community, have come together about the offering of the Red Hat Certified System Administrator certification as a standalone short-term certification program that will be offered now through our Wake Tech non-degree programs, which from my understanding is the first time that these programs have been offered in that kind of a setting with an educational institution. Many offer you can earned certifications along the way to an academic degree. This would be the first time in that kind of standalone. And so we're really excited about that because for us, you really described this perfectly. Our role at Wake Tech is to make sure that people in our community, in our region, have opportunities for the great jobs that exist in this region. And you just described beautifully the role of certification and giving that check of confidence for folks for the education, the training they receive. So thank you for Red Hat and this partnership that you're doing with Wake Tech. We think it's going to be very meaningful to people throughout our region who are looking for these great opportunities that exist, not just at Red Hat, but many of your partners throughout this region, throughout the world. So thank you for that.
Well, we're very excited as well. And I can actually say I'm personally excited because I grew up in Raleigh and Wake County, and I still live in Wake County. And so, it is in fact really exciting to see how Wake Tech is actually going to be leveraging this particular program and seeing that because I have a local connection to that. That's something that I like to see.
Well, you probably can appreciate why we do this. We often use the term laddering at Wake Tech. Sometimes we'll say ladder economics. And, one of the things that we want for the people of our region, or the people like you who grew up in this region, is that, to gain the great jobs that exist in our region, you don't have to just learn them elsewhere and move into our region, that there's a way to gain them step by step, in this case, certification through a non-degree opportunity. As I mentioned before, we'll have our new, we're revamping in many ways our cloud infrastructure degree with a new NSF grant, walking that through at our partnerships with the universities where you can keep moving forward one of our degrees, IT degrees, to another IT degree. And that's what we call laddering. And companies like Red Hat are so important in that regard because you create really tall ladders for us because your jobs are so great, but you also break it down with the opportunity of certification. You give us targets to hit so our students gain the best of both worlds in that regard. So, we're very appreciative of this partnership, and thank you to all our Red Hat friends for working with Wake Tech to make these opportunities available for the people in our region.
Yeah, well, it is very exciting, and I think the laddering concept is spot on. And the program that you're adopting, Red Hat Certified System Administrator, is a great example of that because those are skills very much in demand in the market today that will make a difference for someone's professional advancement in career. But it's also something that is not the very top rung on the ladder either, because what I will assert is that set of skills are really the skills that you need to move on to other kinds of technologies and skills. And so, we were talking about containers and Kubernetes earlier, for example. Containers is very much a Linux concept, and Red Hat Certified System Administrator is a Linux system administration certification. And so it's really a prerequisite, if you will, to being able to move on to some of these other sort of cloud technologies. And what we have found is that the people who have earned that certification do so much better on the certification exams that we do on some of these other kinds of technologies, like, for example, OpenShift and Kubernetes. Appreciably different. And the reason why is because it is a ladder. There's not just the economic ladder, there's sort of that knowledge ladder that people have to ascend as well. But honestly, just getting there onto that RHCSA rung is really, really a great way to start your career into tech.
Well, and to get to a top rung on a tall ladder of opportunity, like in this space, if you will, the Red Hat and the technology and the Linux space, you got to start with the first rung. And and now, thanks to your partnering with us, it's much more accessible to folks to get that start and to keep moving forward than ever before. With the notion of certification, I've often felt like in IT, certification is uniquely important. You see it in the ads. You see that the hiring. I often have felt that IT is based on standards. You have to have standards for computers to talk to each other, for the connections you're talking about. But why do you think certification is so important within the IT world? I mean, we do see it in other areas like from welding to automotive and different areas, but it's not everywhere. But it's so prominent in IT. Any particular reason you think?
That's a really good question, and I think it has to do with how fast technology moves. Okay, and so if you were to, again, use a something that's a bit different. If you were to think about having somebody know the essential skills of being a plumber, I would go so far as to say the essential skills have not changed radically in the last 30 years, right? There's probably, more use of PVC. There's some other kinds of things that probably have evolved. All technologies evolved, but it's not at the same pace of evolution. But if you start talking about technology is always moving faster. And that's the thing, is that if you think about the rate of change in the 80s versus the 90s versus the 2000s, the teens, and now we're into the 2020s, it's continually accelerating. And so that acceleration means that the people who are decision makers at companies trying to identify talent, identify whether they're ready to adopt a technology, whatever it is, the decision makers are further removed from the days when they actually had their hands under the hood, okay? Because most of the technical managers come from a technical background, but they come from a technical background that preceded their being managers, right? And so because that pace of acceleration is so fast, it means that you are having to put a lot more trust into these people that you're hiring or appointing to work on a new technology, because you don't have that firsthand experience with it. Or when you had the experience, things have changed so much when you last touched it that you're just not as deep into it under the hood as you once were. And so that's why I think that IT certifications seem to have that appeal, is that ever accelerating rate of change in this particular industry relative to some other industries.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up with that and say that you mentioned something there. I think you said the wave of technology, and I've often felt like a particular role for us as Wake Tech Community College is to make sure that folks are not being bowled over by that wave, but are able to figure out how to get on top of that wave and ride that wave. And that's what we want for the folks in our region, is to get on top of the tech wave and ride it to the land of prosperity. And that's but you got to get to the top, and you got to work your way up to it. And you're making that possible. So this new partnership that we're so excited to announce with Red Hat will allow for the Red Hat Certified System Administrator program leading to these valuable certifications to be offered through Wake Tech, and what we often refer to as our Power Pack programs, where we'll package together and accelerate, in many cases, job training that leads to meaningful certifications that give folks a foothold to job opportunities that are plentiful in our region with companies like Red Hat and others. This is not just applicable to working at Red Hat, it's to all the different companies that use open source technology, but then also can be a foothold back into our degree programs, where you can carry that credit into a degree program and keep climbing and get on top of the technology wave and ride that wave again to the land of prosperity, which we often find in this area. But to get there, you got to take that first step on that first rung, and that's what this is about. So thank you for helping us to build these ladders and to start this process, and for this partnership to make accessibility what open source has really been about in many cases, to make accessibility for opportunity broadly for the people of Wake County and our region through Wake Tech and this partnership with Red Hat. Thank you, Randy Russell. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks to all our friends and partners at Red Hat. Thanks again to Randy Russell of Red Hat for joining us on this special episode of the We Are Wake Tech podcast. And we want to thank all our partners and friends at Red Hat for this unique opportunity for Wake Tech and for the people of our region. I'm your host, Scott Ralls. We'll see you back here next month for our next episode. In the meantime, you can connect with me on Twitter at Wake Tech Prez. We Are Wake Tech is available on our website at podcast.waketech.edu and on our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. Help us spread the word and rate and review our podcast. And so until next time, take care and be well.
I'm Lori Clowers with a reminder that a great comeback starts at Wake Tech. Fall semester is just a month away. If you haven't applied, do so now at apply.waketech.edu. There's an exciting opportunity for students who graduated from high school or a high school equivalency program this year. They're eligible for a North Carolina long-leave commitment grant of up to $2,800 for college expenses. The only caveat is you must fill out a free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. Families who don't typically think they'd qualify for federal aid should consider filling it out this year because they may qualify for the long leave commitment. You can find the FAFSA on apply.waketech.edu. President Ralls has announced that more than 1,600 students made the President's List or Dean's List in the spring 2021 semester. The Dean's List requires a grade point average of 3.5 or better. The President's List includes students who received a perfect 4.0. Now that's student success. Wake Tech is teaming up with a Place at the Table in downtown Raleigh to address the labor shortage in the hospitality industry. Wake Tech will offer non-degree short-term culinary and baking classes at the cafe on Mondays and weekday evenings when it's closed to customers. Courses leading to certification for employment will be offered at no cost this fall. Big news for Wake Tech IT programs. Wake Tech will become the first institution to offer the Red Hat Certified System Administrator course as a standalone program. It meets the same high-quality standards as those offered by Red Hat at a greatly reduced rate. And Wake Tech has been awarded a $560,000 grant from the National Science Foundation to help meet the need for network technicians with emerging cloud computing skills. It's the college's fourth active NSF grant. Congratulations to 13 cadets who are now on the front lines protecting and serving our community as sworn law enforcement officers. The cadets graduated from basic law enforcement training along with 13 limited enrollees who came to Wake Tech for training after moving here from other locations. Wake Tech welcomes a proven leader as the college's newest executive vice president. Dr. Nicole Reeves will oversee all degree and non-degree programs, as well as enrollment and student services and effectiveness and innovation at the college. She comes to Wake Tech from Northern Virginia Community College and is happy to bring her reach and rally spirit back to her native North Carolina. And Wake Tech is your summer shot spot. The college continues to serve as a convenient location for the COVID-19 vaccination. Get times and dates at starmed.care. And that's your Wake Tech News Update.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Anthony Garnes, Recruitment and Outreach Officer for Wake Technical Community College. And apply.waketech.edu is a great website for students that are interested in pursuing any of our programs here at Wake Tech. It is essentially the landing hub for everything you need to do to become a Wake Tech student. So let's dive right in. When you visit apply.waketech.edu, you'll notice several different options on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll see health science admissions, visiting students admissions, international student admissions, and career and college promise, also known as our CCP program. Typically for students that are pursuing a health science program, they're going to follow the instructions, which is colored in red for the health science admissions. For visiting students, those are students that are looking at maybe taking a few credits with Wake Tech and then transferring to another college or university. That's the blue tab. And then also we have the orange tab for our international student admissions. If we have students that are interested in pursuing a visa or any type of student visa, you would go through the international student admissions department. And then last but not least, we have our dual enrollment program, our career and college promise, also known as our CCP program. This is our dual enrollment program for the state of North Carolina. If you're interested in taking college courses at Wake Tech for free, while currently being enrolled in high school, that you would actually select the green highlighted tab for all information concerning our CCP program. Right below that, we have several options. We have Visit Wake Tech if you're interested in attending a campus tour on our campuses. Currently, right now, we're offering campus tours on our Northern Wake campus and our Southern Wake campus. If you need additional information about paying for college, that is also located at the bottom of the webpage. If you have questions in reference to what type of programs you offer, whether it be certificate, diploma programs, or our 2-year degree options. Our certificate programs range anywhere between 6 to 8 months. Diploma programs are usually 12 months, and then our associate degree programs are 2-year degree options. And then we also have non-degree programs as well. And then you'll see right below that is a great packet for our potential students that are pursuing programs at Wake Tech or wanting more information about what programs they can pursue. Right at the bottom of the webpage, you'll notice where it says related links. You'll see where it says the Future Student Kit. If you were to click on that webpage, it'll actually bring up a Future Student Kit that'll break down for you and have different steps outlined for advising, admissions, financial aid, and a lot of other departments and resources we offer for our current students at Wake Tech. If you're needing further assistance or have questions, our campuses are open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can email us at admissions@waketech.edu. You can also give us a call at 919-866-5420. We look forward to seeing you on campus soon.
Thank you for listening to the We Are Wake Tech podcast. Join us next month for more insightful conversations about the programs and people of Wake Tech and how the college changes lives every day. Be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast app to have each episode delivered right to your computer or mobile device. For more, find us at podcast.waketech.edu. To learn more about Wake Tech's exceptional educational opportunities, visit waketech.edu.